How's everybody doing? I heard you were tired. We're going to have fun, I promise.
It's going to be great.
I'm Christine White. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I head up content and media strategy for Ulta Beauty.
Hi, I'm Alli Stone with Google, and I personally get to work with Christine and the Ulta Beauty team on a regular basis. So really excited to showcase the amazing work that is coming out of Ulta Beauty and Christine's team, who is oftentimes at the center of much of this. So excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So I know the theme of today is all around media, buying, innovation. So maybe that's a good place to kick off and start. Can you tell us a little bit about how Ulta approaches innovation and what that means from, looking at innovation through the lens of evolving it for your guests?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we think about innovation, right, we usually think disruptive innovation, right? Big things, big seismic movements. And yes, that's absolutely important to businesses, especially looking to evolve. But a lot of what we do, right, is more in the spaces of sustainable and incremental innovation, right? How can we improve upon the product that we have so it can sustain, right, over the course of a period of time? And further growth in the business. As we think about incrementality in terms of innovation, those are things like adding technology, right? Adding platforms to our mix, evolving how we look at our data, better interfacing with things like CRM systems and technology stacks that allow us to really pinpoint that consumer journey, which I'm sure a lot of folks have talked about today. So that's a lot of the area where we're kind of doubling down right now. And then certainly as we think about this idea of being the heart of the beauty community and how can we innovate with consumers as it relates to connection, right? So that seems obvious, but it's often the hardest thing to crack. As it really relates to getting underneath the consumer behavior and really being able to evolve with that evolving consumer behavior. So we've spent a lot of time looking at social media, content creation, the ecosystem of influence as we think about that overall impact. So that's across our entire enterprise. So I know that's a lot, and I certainly don't oversee all of it, but
Yeah, and speaking of, I mean, there's a lot of cross-functional work that has to go into that. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're engaging with all those various teams across Ulta Beauty? Like, how does that come into play from an innovation perspective all the way to media strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Ulta's really been at the forefront of a lot of that as we think about collaboration and cross-functional teams. Our corporate strategy team has really led us through quite a bit of the evolution as a business, adding centers of excellence as we look at digital, as we look at innovation broadly, as we look at media. We're continuing to build out what that looks like. We just launched our retail media network. So a lot of that collaboration really does come down to the art and science of it. Of being able to operate in a silo so that you can keep the work moving forward in matrix organizations, but at the same time, bringing people along on that journey. So we've set up infrastructures quite a bit in operations capacities to enable us to do that. And then obviously, as we look at technology, a lot of our tools to keep us tracking from a project management perspective as well.
Great. And I know the art and science of it is understated, I'd imagine. I mean, I think about how much the shopping journey has changed over the last couple of years, and then the beauty journey specifically. So many different touch points from discovering on social media to virtual try-ons. It just makes selecting shades and products so much easier. And then, of course, my specific space in search, we see just the volume and the demand at all-time highs.
Yeah.
How do you go about making decisions on what platforms are the right ones in order to reach and engage with your beauty shoppers?
Yeah. So this is absolutely where the investment in understanding your consumer really comes in, broadly and narrowly, right? As it relates to your direct consumer, to your business, as it relates to the consumer opportunity pool that you have. We recently underwent some research this year that really looked at the beauty enthusiast and looked at their media consumption diet. And no surprise, right? They start with search, right? They start with search as a means for discovery. but what gets them there, right? So those are where a lot of the indirect enablers come in. We absolutely know social media has an impact on the beauty enthusiast, but it doesn't always mean that you're going to have that direct one-to-one correlation to sales, right? But you absolutely, and I'm sure all of us in this audience have seen something and saw something and like, I need to get that. But what's the next thing you do? You go to Google and you search for it, right? So absolutely
Where do I buy it? Is this the right
exactly.
product?
So starting to understand some of those fundamentals when you think about the shopping experience specifically as it relates to checkout, of really being able to connect those dots. So some of that absolutely does come from being able to connect our consumer data to our platforms and really be able to find that through thread. Google has been an absolutely pivotal and important partner for us as we look at taking all of our data, and Ulta Beauty is in a very fortunate position to have a member database that's 37 million members deep. So as we look at the sales driven from that and the data that we're able to really understand on our consumer, it puts us in, a really advantageous position to be able to think about that journey and be really thoughtful and personal with them.
Yeah, I mean the data and insights, I think it's just such a edge that the Ulta Beauty Hat team has just with not only the 37 million Ultimate Rewards members, but also your site, what's happening from a review perspective around products, all of your stores, so much data and insights that you sit on top of. How do you use that to inform your media strategies and infuse it into those media strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we are a retailer. We are brick and mortar. We are social. We are web. We are app. The omni-channel experience and the omni-channel shopper are definitely the most important thing that we need to connect the dots on. We know that shopper is the most engaged. We know that shopper spends the most with us. So that's absolutely how we have to think about doubling down on creating frictionless shopping experiences, right? It doesn't always mean that they're using their app to shop. They might be in the store using their app to look up products or reviews, like you said, using that content as a driver for influence and actually wanting to touch and feel product and purchase in brick and mortar. So it really is connecting the dots between all of those experiences so that it's this idea of being able to shop anywhere.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible, and I experienced it going into one of your stores a couple of weeks ago. Just the functionality of when you're actually in the store, integrating it with the app to then make better decisions, which is super cool in a number of different capacities. But I'd love to learn a little bit more about, again, like with that data, like how are the teams like making some buying decisions? Are there any platforms that you're really excited about that are on the horizon this year, or some big bets that you're making?
Absolutely. So when we think about how we look at our investment strategies, we take a pillar approach, right? This idea of know, feel, do, right? How do we get them to know about our brand? How do we get them to feel and connect with our brand? Often not what we sell, right? But the things that surround what we sell, the lifestyle of how it fits into their world, and then do, right? How do we actually influence preference and purchase? So we look at that, right, really as we go to build our marketing strategies and our go-to-market plans of what is that percent mix, right? What is it that we have to do as a business? What do we know? Yes, of course, we're a retailer. We need to drive sales. That's obvious. But how do we need to go and do that, right? What are going to be the strategies and objectives that allow us to do that? So starting there, right, fundamentally is just from an investment framework perspective, helps us to then make decisions about platform selection. So we know streaming audio is something that I'm super passionate about. The increasing addressability that streaming audio has with the beauty enthusiast, just as you think about, getting ready in the morning, right? Going out at night, and the role that music plays or the role that audio, voice, sound plays for a beauty enthusiast is really crucial. And so you think about those adjacencies to the physical nature of beauty. And it's in the unexpected, I always say, right? Those are the connection points. It's not in the obvious thing. The obvious thing, your consumers are easily going to shop with you. It's finding those platforms that allow that connection to come in unexpected ways that make the big difference. So audio, social is absolutely a platform that we're investing in, especially as we look at emerging spaces like commerce and live live shopping, live commerce, just general live stream as we think overall about edutainment and content. And really doubling down on those capacities. And then obviously, as we think about right, platforms that we know work. I've mentioned search, and it's absolutely extremely important platform and extremely important channel for us, because we know it can shift and change a lot of the behavior of our consumer.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up live streams and some of these new spaces that are really emerging and evolving over the past couple of years. Social commerce, live stream are a couple big ones that come to mind. I'd imagine when you think about your team and the skill sets, because these are very unique skill sets that the team needs to kind of understand and really kind of hone in to drive that strategy forward. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're structuring your team around these emerging formats, any skill sets that are critical in order to succeed in those areas?
Yeah. Alli always jokes that I have a very large team, and I tend to very much disagree with her. But my functional oversight, right, is influencer relations. It's our national media efforts, our content strategy team, and then our social media team. And when I think about who I'm looking for in building a team, it's people who are able to connect dots, right? Because as we think about modern marketing, it all has to be connected. Data has to be connected to creative, and creative has to be connected to strategy. So they all work congruently, and they all have to triangulate, right? So you have to, and I hate when people say you have to go find the unicorns, but you have to find people that can think through and really pull that thread through. You have to understand why an ad unit, right, might be the right place to place it, but the creative isn't going to make that connection. And ultimately, you're going to be able to explain that through the data. So really having a team that fundamentally understands that. Do they have to be an expert in all of it? No, but they have to have the skill set to be able to see beyond kind of their tactical function. So a lot of dot connectors on my team, and they know I call them that all the time. And really being able to be conduits between marketing strategy and creative execution. So media buyers know that, right? Fundamentally, it's all about creating the connection. If you're not creating the connection, you're not getting the business. So fundamentally, when we start there, we find ourselves in a really strong place.
Yeah, no, and there's just so much on the horizon, I'd imagine, and just continuing to build on top of that. Creative and content strategy. I know an area you're very passionate about. I'm also a big believer in creative is such a huge component of overarching performance. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you bring that Ulta beauty message to life, or how you're thinking about it from a creative execution component of the media strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this is absolutely an area that is a work in progress. If I had it all solved, I'd give you, the play-by-play and the playbook, but we have not figured that out. We are a retailer. We have a brand of 600 other brands. We have a retail media network arm where our brands are constantly pushing out hundreds of messages through to our data through our platform. We have co-op programs, and we have core marketing, right? And as you think about the number of messages that, yes, we're talking 37 million people plus, but that's still a lot of messages for a consumer to be receiving. So there is a lot of opportunity to think about audience strategy and getting really, really solid about who we're reaching with what message, with what creative, and being really thoughtful about how we test and learn with them. VidMob is a partner of ours. We've had an awesome partnership with them the past couple of years. And they have an awesome creative analytics tool that has taught us a lot about how we think about the creative that we produce against the programs. A lot of what we do are promotional events. We know that a lot of promotional event messaging actually doesn't resonate with the consumer. So creating test and learn strategies that really allow us to validate that from a marketing perspective as we think about placement, as we think about the creative articulation, it only allows us to get smarter, our analytics and performance to get stronger.
Yeah, there's so much to creative effectiveness and the creative strategy. Never enough creative. I know it's the challenge for everyone to get that right message and that personalization element in there. But Just going back to the data and insights, or even from a creative perspective, I mean, is there anything that's interesting that you've learned recently about your audience, or just whether it be a message or just an insight that you pulled through a strategy? Just curious, like, what was interesting about it? Like, how did you then leverage that for your planning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we've found, which should come as no surprise, right, is humanity drives better engagement, right? So anytime that we are featuring people talking about product in our creative and in our messaging, we see stronger performance regardless of the KPI, whether it's an upper funnel KPI or it's a ROAS KPI. We continue to find that through thread as we look and really get underneath creative strategy. And I mentioned it before, right? The flip side of it is that we don't have to be overly promotional to market towards a promotional event, right? People know if they want something, they will figure out how to get a discount. They will figure out where to buy it. They will figure out how to get the best bang for their buck. Consumers are increasingly savvy that way. And so as you think about connection, it doesn't always have to be, the creative doesn't always have to be inadvertently driving the thing that you sell, right? It has to drive the action and the output of how they're going to use it. Because it goes back to, right, how does your brand fit into their life? And fundamentally, more and more, those who really understand modern marketing are really successful with that.
And maybe this is a good point to kind of pivot to diversity and inclusion. I know this is really ingrained in Ulta Beauty's mission, and the whole team is very invested in it. Can you tell us a little bit more how you're thinking about it from a messaging strategy, media strategy, or just like a little bit about how Ulta Beauty thinks about it in its entirety?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, kind of starting at the highest level, right? As you think about Ulta Beauty, you think Ulta Beauty is a retailer, right? But I said it before, we are also a brand. And so we are in this very unique position of, as we increasingly think about the competition of other retailers, we have to convince them to love us, right? To consider Ulta Beauty. So it's less about the things that we sell, because you can get those everywhere. And it's more about the values, right? The things that are unique to Ulta Beauty, the offering that we're able to give to consumers. And so fundamentally, this idea of even at a brand equity level, right? Beauty is a force for good, and that we celebrate the superpowers of beauty. And yes, I understand that's 20,000 feet in the air at a brand equity level, but principally applying that, right? And bringing that kind of down into the marketing funnel. We have to think about where we have opportunity. We look at key cohorts where we have opportunity. It's absolutely with the Black community. And so, yes, we have to live the story, right? Our business has to be investing in those communities. They have to be doubling down on brands that are founded by and with those consumers. And then we have to be telling that story. And so that includes who we're investing with, right? As we think about multicultural media and those audience there, as we think about the ownership of those media properties, those are all key considerations for us. And as we think about the messages, right, and who we're creating for, yes, it's more work, right? But the output is always worth it. We look at our Latina and Hispanic audiences. We over-index in those. They love beauty, right? But we have to be able to think about messages that are both general and narrow, and how we speak to those audiences. So it's an extremely important overall mission of Ulta Beauty. It shows up most visibly from a media and marketing perspective, but it's something that we've been really doubling down on since I joined in 2018. And it has really, we have seen a lot of the fruits of that labor, even as we look at, the audiences that we've been able to bring in, the commitments that we've made, and being able to, I joke with my team, right? Our goal is to change hearts and minds. And so being able to change hearts and minds is not easy in an increasingly competitive and cluttered market.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fantastic mission, and I know Ulta Beauty just really stands behind it, which is so incredible. In terms of competition, and especially over the past couple of years, how shoppers and beauty shoppers are shopping, like, it's very omni now. A lot of the brands that you partner with, they have their own direct to consumer channels. How have you shifted your strategy just to think about like this new type of shopper that has really evolved over the past few years?
Yeah, like I had mentioned, omni shoppers are our most valuable shopper, absolutely. And really, it goes back to why shop with us versus anywhere else, right? So our loyalty program is 37 million members deep for a reason, right? It is absolutely best in class. I give all the credit to that team because it fundamentally speaks to a lot of the reasons why people love to shop with us, right? They know that they can get more value when shopping with us. So as we think about, that consumer dynamic, those are absolutely things that we consider kind of going into that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know we talked a little bit about all these new types of platforms that really have emerged. The live stream shopping, creators are a big part of
Mhm.
your portfolio, and then of course your digital strategies, your traditional strategies. Curious how you measure it all, and if there's really any differences with how you're measuring like a tried and true strategy versus something that's on an entirely new platform that you just know is like the right place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with that second part of that question. Live shopping could have a whole other Q&A on live shopping, something I'm very passionate about, but it's not necessarily to drive commerce as the end goal right now anyway, right? So it absolutely is a test and learn for us to understand the behavior of that shopper. You look at why it's so popular in Asia, and there are very different reasons why it will be popular here. So yes, we can take things from that, but intentionally, it's two different consumer cultures. So as we think about things like scarcity, right, as we think about things like limited edition, and that's why drops and things like that work so well with consumers, the connection to culture, the idea of luxury price points, all of those things, right, are absolutely driving commerce for a lot of these live shopping partners. But for it to just be a functional part of who we are, right? You can go buy the lipstick today, or you can go buy it tomorrow. So we have to offer something different there. But it's absolutely a place we want to be, right? We want
Right.
to learn, we want to understand. And we've learned a lot about consumers. We've created huge remarketing pools from live shopping events. So yes, the intent might not be, commerce right then, but we absolutely have opportunity to think about what their journey looks like with us from there and be able to continue to engage with them.
Yeah.
And then as you think about, additional new platforms, it's always let's test, right? Let's listen, let's learn, let's see what other people are doing.
You
And
don't test, you don't learn.
and you
You
don't
don't know what's
learn.
out there.
And so going into it, right, with what does success look like? What is the goal of this really helps us to remind ourselves, to remind our cross-functional partners, our merchant partners often as well, of why we do things. And so they don't always live on forever. And when you fail, you fall forward, right? And you learn a lot from it. So that's absolutely how we kind of approach
Yeah, I
new.
I love that. And test and learn. I mean, it's a critical component to any media strategy. So you get to understand what's working or how to pivot and evolve and grow from there.
Yeah.
Okay, last question before I open it up to the crowd here. So when we think about the audiences, I know your ultimate reward members, huge part of the audiences that you're re-engaging with.
Mhm.
But when you think about like new customer acquisition and just like so many beauty enthusiasts out there, any key differences with how you're going after one type of audience versus the other type of
Yeah.
audience?
Yeah, this is a personal passion and personal bent of mine, right? Because I talked about changing hearts and minds, right? We can't do what we've always done with people we haven't already captured. We have 37 million people in our member database. We know a thing or two about what can draw them in. That's not working for those other people. We've been in business, right, for 30 years now. So we have to think differently. We have to start, and this is where innovation comes in, right? And in that sense of things, we have to think beyond that. And that's where things like content comes in, where it is indirect selling, this idea of the value exchange that content, things like influencers and the role they play, all of us in this room and the level of influence that you can have as you think about advocacy and ambassadorship. So it's not going to be the same things that Ulta Beauty has always done to be reaching them. And so it really is this idea of, what do they need? Who are they? Understanding who that audience is. And we've done a lot of that work from a persona perspective broadly across the landscape. So,
And then probably testing and learning
and I was
into
going to
what's
say, and then
working.
testing and learning, absolutely, of really being able to expand on that. So that's our mission for next year in a big way, and we're excited to tackle it.
Very, very exciting. So I'll open it up to the crowd. Any questions for Christine? And I think the mic is coming back for you.
Hi, Elliot Rosenbaum from the Trade Desk. First off, thank you for being so open with everything that you're working on, and congratulations about the Retail Media Network that you guys recently launched. I'm curious to know what excites you the most about the launch of the Retail Media Network, and where do you think the largest value you're going to bring to the brands that you work with? Is it building awareness with your loyalty and your customer base, which you've talked about, or is it being able to help them drive that end conversion and be that little nudge that pushes them over the edge?
Yeah, absolutely. So candidly, I don't oversee our Retail Media Network, but what I'm excited for, as I think about what that team is going to go and build, right, is the shared mutual objectives of the brand and our business, right? So we are always going to benefit from what our brand partners are ultimately driving with their objectives in mind, right? So as we think about driving stronger cross-category penetration, just as we think about shopping behavior, right, and the ability for a brand to help us do that, right, there's mutual benefit there. Our brands are absolutely going to be able to help us drive growth and scale as an overall business so that we can better support them too, right? So we can better support our overall total business so that we can invest more in our brands, big and small, because our emerging brand category is absolutely a very important piece of our retail mix. So, and plus just more opportunity for support, right? So I think that as being a retailer and having to split your time and focus and prioritization across so many different things is the ability to really be able to provide that from an overall relationship perspective as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we have time for one more.
Hi there.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm not good with mics. So Alli, you made such an interesting point, and Christine, just very curious to play off that when you're going after audiences where, hey, it's someone that we're not as familiar with. From a strategic standpoint, when you're getting data and information from your partners across the business, what data sources do you leverage? How do you get a good understanding in terms of we've got all this media, we want to put together a media plan, but we don't know who these people are. We don't know how they consume media. Like, what data sources do you use? How do you collect that information?
Yeah, a lot of what we do is lookalike modeling, right? Because we do have such a strong audience pool there. And we recently just went through segmentation work to look at personas, right? And be able to overlay that to our current member file to make some assumptions on who that pool of 30 million people are that we have not yet captured to be able to do that. So that's a lot of really how we look at data sources in terms of being able to look at some of that data. We have a really strong credit card program as we look at that as well, and being able to overlay some of that segmentation as well. But that's usually how we have been approaching it from our perspective, and certainly plan to do as we think about acquisition strategies in the future.
Great. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Christine.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Alli.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.